Hello everyone, globe earthers and flat earthers alike. I got my famous large tennis ball representing the earth. And over there yonder I have a golf ball representing the moon. And as you can see, I've darkened the back half, and the front half is still white. Okay. And somebody in my last video said, hey, you know, that's not really the dark side of the moon. Okay. Well, it's the shadowy side of the moon. Whatever you want to call it. What I'm calling it for the purposes of this video is the dark side of the moon. Now, in my definition for this video, I'm giving you a definition of what I call a dark side of the moon, just for ease of talk. The dark side of the moon is the side not facing the sun way over there. Okay, for this video, some might have other ideas of what the dark side of the moon is. That's what I'm referring to when I say the dark side of the moon. It's the shadowy side. It's the side being blocked by the lit side of the moon. Okay, that's what I'm calling the dark side of the moon. Now, to distinguish the two, I'm going to call this side of the moon the far side of the moon, because it's the farthest side from, it's the opposite from the earth. Okay, the side that we don't normally see. We don't see the far side of the moon. Okay, so that's the definitions. I don't care. Some people say the dark side of the moon is the same as the far side of the moon. That's their problem. For this video, the dark side of the moon is the side facing away from the sun, and the far side of the moon is the side facing away from the earth. Got it? So we got that terminology right there. Okay, the second thing is the moon is 239,000 miles away from Earth. Okay, this is very significant. Okay, whether you believe it or not, you can't. What I noticed with flat earthers is they'll use the numbers for flat Earth that won't work with heliocentric Earth. They'll say, oh yeah, that doesn't work because the sun is local or something. No, I'm talking about, when I'm talking about heliocentric, I'm talking about globe Earth. Okay, I'm using global Earth numbers. You can't say, oh gee, but because the Earth doesn't rotate and the moon and the sun are actually close, what you're saying doesn't work. Yeah, it doesn't work because you're talking about flat Earth, and I'm talking about heliocentric Earth. And okay, unlike many of you, I can distinguish between the two models. I don't give you flat Earth numbers, okay, talking about globe Earth, because they obviously it's not going to work that way. So this is very important. The moon is 239,000 miles away from the Earth. Okay. Now there's the sun. The sun is way over there, and that is what's going on here. The sun is lighting up the bright side of the moon, the lit side of the moon. It's lighting it up. And the dark side of the moon is being blocked by the front side of the moon, the side that's lit up by the sun. It's being blocked. It's the shadowy side. I'm going to call it the dark side. I've already talked about that. And same with the Earth. So if you got the Earth, I didn't blacken in the back of the Earth, but this is daylight. Over here is daylight. If you're standing here and on the Earth with the sun over there, this is daylight. If you're standing behind the lit side, where this side is blocking the light of the sun, to this side, you're at nighttime. Okay? You're at nighttime if you're standing here, and you're in daylight if you're standing there. Same thing for the moon. They're both spheres, obviously, in this model. Okay? So they're both being lit up by the sun at the same time. So the dark side of the moon is not the shadow of the moon. Of the Earth. Okay? That's an eclipse. That is a specific thing that happens. And the shadow of the Earth lights up or overshadows the lit side of the moon, not the dark side of the moon, not what I'm calling the dark side of the moon. If the Earth was to pass, or the Earth was to pass between the sun and the moon, right? It's the Earth's shadow hitting the lit side of the moon. That's what we're seeing. The dark side is still over here. The dark side is still the dark side. That's an eclipse of the moon, where the Earth is in between. Okay, it's very specific. But for this purposes of this video, and what I'm going to call the phases of the moon, I'm going to demonstrate the phases of the moon. Has nothing to do with the sun. Has nothing to do with the Earth. Okay? It has everything to do with our angular view from the Earth. The Earth isn't causing the phases of the moon. Okay? And guess what? This whole time you're going to see the different phases of the moon. Guess what? That moon, it revolves around the Earth. True. Okay? But what you're going to see here is that the lit side of the moon doesn't change. The half of the moon is always lit up. Okay? And the other half is always away from the sun in the dark side. I'm calling it the dark side. Okay? So, from the Earth over here, you can see it looks like a half moon, what we would call a half moon. And under the, look at that. I got a little black background. And look, from Earth, you can't see the dark side. Looks like it's disappeared. Okay, and all you can see is the lit side. But you only can see 1/4 of that moon. One quarter slice of a sphere. That's all you can see. Okay. So that's half moon. So we're going to start at the half moon. And notice that when we go around here, okay, when we go around, okay, that moon, the lit side doesn't change, but our angular, I'm showing you the angular vision to that moon. Now the moon's a sphere, and the only thing that the only object that is a sphere from a 360-degree view of it is a sphere. Okay, so here we're gonna go around the tape, angular, as if that moon is moving. Okay, it is moving around, it's opening. Look at that. Just we have a different angle view of the moon, and we're already seeing, you can see the phase. It looks like a phase. It looks like the moon is changing, right? But it's not. We're just seeing more of the dark side than the light side. Look, see, that looks like quarter moon, right? And against a little darker background, you can see it even better, right? So we're changing our angular position to the moon, okay, until we are looking straight on. Right, we're looking straight on, and we're seeing what we call a new moon, or only the dark side. We're only seeing the dark side of the moon here. Okay, call that the new moon. And now when we come around, look, all of a sudden you see a quarter moon. We're starting to see more light. Okay, but as you notice, the only thing that's changing is our angular view of the moon. That's all that's changing. Not the light on the moon. The light on the moon is not changing. It's always lit up halfway. Half of that moon is always lit up, and half is always dark. See, now we're looking at a half moon again. Okay, but our angular change, and now we're seeing more and more of the lit side of the moon. Do you see it? Okay, we're seeing more of the lit side of the moon until we come around straight on, looking at that moon, and we're looking at what we call a full moon. All we're looking at as the lit side. The dark side we don't see at this point. It's still dark back there. Hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. Just our angular position. So these phases of the moon are really not phases. Like, it's not really, it sounds like they're changing. Like the side of the moon is changing. It looks that way, but it's not. It's just our angular position to the moon until we come back around to what I marked as side one. And there it is, half the moon where we started. All right, so that's phases of the moon. And it's not the Earth's shadow. And half the moon is always lit up, because the only side of the moon that is ever lit up is the side facing the sun. The moon is not its own light. It doesn't generate its own light. Okay, it's a sphere no matter which way we look at it. That's the only object that looks like a sphere all the way around it. It would be a sphere. All right, well, Nick out.